general, I had an aggressive nature, and that was because a lot of people tried to move me to the receiver position, which I played in college and in high school. I would go catch a pass or two, but I wanted to hit people. I wanted to mix it up, and that's just always been. And sometimes it hurt because I was very undersized. So, but I didn't mind sticking in there. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get you down one way or the other, and I'm gonna let you know I'm around, and I'm gonna keep buzzing around. But I didn't mind. I didn't mind a little contact. And like you said, that goes back to the roots of Western Pennsylvania football. From the beginning, we're taught contact. That's what we're taught. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and it's pounding. It's contact, no matter how you're built. That's always going to be physical.
Come on.
Used to be our spot we used to hang at. You got to go loaf with these guys on a Saturday, and you don't want to be the guy that lost on Friday to have to go loaf with them on Saturday. We're all competing for the same commodities as one might say in the neighborhood. So, and it goes way back, and we became great friends. It was friendly rivalries, To this day, we're still a tight knit group. We still speak with each other and keep it tight. So. It was a family dynamic. It was a beautiful thing to grow up in, really. It really was.
Come on.
Back with one more down. Today we have number 21, JERMAINE Carswell, running back, wide receiver, defensive back out of Penn High School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. JERMAINE is one of my teammates from college. He was a fantastic defensive back for the Edinboro University Fighting Scots, where we crossed paths and were teammates for 3 full seasons. Today I get the chance to catch up with him and, just go over how life has been since those days in the 90s when we were out there covering receivers and knocking people out. I'm glad to get you on today, get a chance to listen to who you are and, what life is taking you through since we ended our days as football players for the Fighting Scots. So thank you for agreeing to be on with me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Ron.
We generally start off, we like to get a feel of who the individual is and how that personality was created. If I'm thinking about you as a younger man in our younger days, you always had an edge to you. You were always very intense when it came to competition. But if you were a person who was, in your inner circle, there was another side of you where you were a funny guy, very observant guy. So my curiosity is, where does that personality and that edge begin for you?
Just generally, the, the personality just comes from a wealth of culture. Growing up, I spent time overseas and in and amongst different people, so I've learned to appreciate different people and love just integrating and learning about other people and being social with people. Um, as far as athletics, it's just a family thing, like a lot of people down the generations. So anything you touch, you have to go hard, and that was always my thing.
As far as your athletic life, what where does that foundation set on for you? What are your earliest memories of formal competition and competing as an athlete?
Well, my first sport actually was soccer, and it's probably my favorite sport even to this day. I started off playing soccer as a 5 year old, and in order for me to actually play as a 5 year old, I had to play with the 6 and 7 year olds, and I had a parent, which was my mother, who was my first coach. That was the only way I was allowed to play. Um, Otherwise, my family is a basketball family at heart, so there was a big push for basketball. I've always had a basketball in my hand. Um, Other than that, I just gravitated to whatever. I was an all-around athlete, so whatever the season was, I wanted to be a part of it. Plus the socialization of, my friends, like I said, I just wanted to be around whatever they were doing. So whatever they touched, I touched. If I would have been somewhere where they were playing hockey, I probably would have played hockey too.
Now you enlighten us on the fact that you've been overseas, been around different groups of people. What was the impetus behind you being overseas?
My father was working. He was an air traffic controller, and that part of the Air Force, a part of that time as well. So I spent actually my first 3 years of school learning in Japan. I was on an Air Force base, but I definitely got integrated in the culture. And like I said, that's just part of how people are groomed for their life, is their early life experiences. So for me, excuse me, it was being in another place, totally foreign, but it was natural because I was young. So that's what I grew up in. So I grew up around different people, no matter where I was from. That's how I started off my life experience. So everything else I just built upon that.
And can you touch on, what your family dynamic is? Your mom, your dad, and your siblings.
Right now,
Just
in general,
totality. Yes.
um, well, fortunately, I still have both my parents. Uh, Everybody, we have a great relationship. I have an older brother. I have two younger sisters, and I have an adopted younger brother. And we're all here in the Pittsburgh area. So, we keep close ties. We've always been a close family with cousins and extended family. We've always been close. So it's just a big family situation. It's a good situation.
Now, with your dad being, a serviceman, was there a lot of discipline, in your household under your father's reign?
There was an attempt at some discipline. Yeah, I'm sure. You know what I mean? I don't remember it being extra hard nosed at all. But I had my little, we had our scrapes and scribbles of me going the other way. But I don't remember it being like boot camp type style. He was a laid back character back then. Right now, he's a pastor. So it's kind of funny to watch his dynamic change as we grew up, because they were young parents as well. So, you know, it's funny that when I got his age, to think back of him being my father at that age and like, oh, okay, that's what he was doing. You know what I mean? That's what he was doing. He's a 35-year-old parent, and I remember what I was doing at 35. So it's like, I understand a little bit better now the dynamic that the line he was trying to walk, because he's still a young man just trying to live life. So it makes more sense once you get older and retrospectively can take a look at it.
And then, I remember a few occasions, your brother coming up to Edinboro, and then I do remember your sister, Nikki, being up there towards the end of our time up in school. What is that relationship between you and your older brother? And was he a person that helped sharpen your skills, in terms of giving you an edge athletically?
Not really, because he wasn't a big athlete, but he is somebody that I wish that I always wanted to emulate and be like more. He was that guy that pretty much always did the right thing. You know what I mean? He was that guy. He raised a family from young. He worked young and just did what he had to do, what I would call the right thing. He didn't play sports. Now he did, and he kind of got kicked out back in the day. So he kind of went back. So he had a hot temper, and they were doing some football drill or something, and coach kicked him. You know how it was back in the day. Coach, put a boot to you on the sled, get you moving or whatever. So he didn't take kindly to that, and that was just the end of that. And it kind of followed me coming in. It was like, oh, here's some of his little brother. You know what I mean? So, but he was done, which is a shame because he's very athletic and he's a big guy, if you remember. So, his nickname is the Bear, and for a reason, and he likes to scrap, and he can move around pretty good. So it's a shame that he didn't get to go on that path, but that's just how life works. But as a person, he was always that guy that you can look up to, and coming up, he's always done the right thing.
Now, I've always heard of Penn Hills, and of course, some of the great names that have come through that program. Larry Jackson being a teammate of ours in college. Can you give me some insight into what that area was like for you growing up, and what did playing in those systems in that area instill in you in terms of getting you ready for that next level of competition as a college athlete?
Oh man, the biggest thing we used to do, this in the locker room is figure out who had the best football. You know what I mean? So you got them Ohio guys that think they got the best football. The PA guys think they got the best football. Then we start trickling in. Our little Florida guys come in. They swear they got the best football. Then we got a rogue Texas guy come in. So of course we all think we got the best football, and we all had great football, which is how we became who we were, because who we played around and who we came up with. And that definitely, coming from Penn Hills, coming from Western Pennsylvania, which has always been known as a hotbed for quarterbacks, for a long time. Linebackers, a lot of people can name some greats that come through their place, but there's been some greats that came through, my school before me, after me, and just everywhere around. If you look at it, I think I said maybe 4 Hall of Famers that are just out of our general our playing area. You know what I mean? There's 4 people out of the Hall of Fame in our era, not even like 10, 20 years back. Literally within our 6 years, 4 years, 6 years of playing, you got 4 people from the Hall of Fame. And that's not even really taking into account Aliquippa, which who knows what they put in their water, because they just push them out. They got Hall of Fame after Hall of Famer. So it was big like that. And it was always tallied like that. Just like you being from Ohio, you understood growing up, Friday Night Lights, you knew what it was growing up from a midget when they used to bring us out and honor us, during a Friday night game. That was the greatest thing, to put your jersey on and get out in front of the lights in the crowd, just walk across the field at halftime. Like, oh, I want a part of this one day. So it meant a lot. And there was a lot of people around pushing to be a part of that. And I still say PA has the best football.
Well, given that I played on both sides of the line, I won't argue with you that it doesn't. They do have some tremendous athletes over there. I think it's at the time it was certainly a different brand of football, straight ahead in your face, and you had to stand up and be a man and be ready to bow your neck if you're going to get out there and participate, because there's nothing finesse about Western Pennsylvania football in the 90s. Looking at some of your clips and, knowing the type of athlete that you were in your day, you certainly had a lot of spring in your step. You were a very aggressive guy as we spent our time on the field together. But you and I both kind of being undersized for some of the positions that we played in terms of weight. What is that about, the man inside of you that gave you that sense of confidence to not fear anyone or back down from any challenges?
In general, I had an aggressive nature, and that was because a lot of people tried to move me to the receiver position, which I played in college and in high school. I would go catch a pass or two, but I wanted to hit people. I wanted to mix it up, and that's just always been. And sometimes it hurt because I was very undersized. So, but I didn't mind sticking in there. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get you down one way or the other, and I'm gonna let you know I'm around, and I'm gonna keep buzzing around. But I didn't mind. I didn't mind a little contact. And like you said, that goes back to the roots of Western Pennsylvania football. From the beginning, we're taught contact. That's what we're taught. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and it's pounding. It's contact. No matter how you're built, it's always going to be physical.
So, playing in the Quad A East Division in the WPIAL, there's some tremendous teams and programs in that corridor there. You go against Gateway, you go against Penn Trafford, you're playing against Woodland Hills, Gerald Thompson, who ended up being a teammate of ours. Jason Taylor is on that team. Dave Harris is on that team. Mike Acey is on that team. Can you give me, your memories of, the competition that you played against in high school, and, what were some of those standout games or standout moments or individuals that you remember going against and competing against to test yourself?
Most definitely. And a lot of those are the guys that you named, partially because it was a system where we've been playing against each other since, midget league. So it's something that's built in community. That community is built in. And so we go from one level to the next, and we're going at it. So like I said, you mentioned GT and Ace and Dave Harris. Can't forget about Mike Logan, who was like my arch rival forever. We played in several midget championship leagues against each other, and all the way into high school, that was the guy. Went on, obviously, played for, the draft pick for the Jags and played for the Steelers, got a ring. Like I said, that's just what we were dealing with. All these type of people. You mentioned Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer. All these people were on the field, and sometimes I almost forget some of the people that were on the field because at some point there were so many. You know what I mean? It's tough football every week, and you're subject to lose to even the teams that aren't the greatest of teams because it's tough football every week, and you got rivals. And like my coach used to say, those are the guys you got to go loaf with on a Friday night or the Saturday after the game. And, McDonald's used to be our spot we used to hang at. You got to go loaf with these guys on a Saturday. And you don't want to be the guy that lost on Friday to have to go loaf with them on Saturday. We're all competing for the same commodities as one might say in the neighborhood. So, and it goes way back. And we became great friends. It was friendly rivalries, To this day, we're still a tight-knit group. We still speak with each other and keep it tight. So it was a family dynamic. It was a beautiful thing to grow up in, really. It really was.
Looking at what the style of football was for the time that you were in high school, a lot of times you guys are lining up in power I with two tights and just going right at your competition. You get moved around the field quite a bit. You show up as a running back, you get split out as a wide receiver, you return kicks, getting interceptions on defense. What were some of the things that the Penn Hills program did to get you guys prepared for that competition? Whether that be your off-season work, program philosophy, or just the overall attitude of what was expected to be a Penn Hills Indian during those seasons that you played?
Well, I'll tell you what, we had a program that's been since, I don't know if you want to call it outlawed or they moved away from it, that was probably the most unique thing in the country. I would easily reach out to say. So when we started camp in the beginning of the season, football camp, we actually moved into our gym. So you bring your bed, you bring some electronics or whatever. So the whole team moved into the gym for a week of 3-a-days. So this is high school. So we move into the gym. Literally, you don't leave. We got 3 days. We eat in the cafeteria, and that kind of learned a little bit of discipline. It was tough. Your first year doing it is tough. You're not even that far away from home, but for some people, you're away from home for a week. I mean, you're not even allowed to see. You got one day during the week where people could come visit, but otherwise, back then there wasn't no phones or not. You can't really contact people. We were literally secluded and just getting down to business. And that was the most unique thing. And I thought it was a great thing. It built a lot of camaraderie. I said, we're in that gym, and that's it. And that was how the season started. And I've never seen anything like that. And like I said, they stopped doing it. With the way the world is now, there's probably a lot of things that, hinder that. But that's how we started. And I thought that was the biggest thing that Penn Hills did. It taught you about camp life. A lot of people, I know, like I said, I have a younger brother who's in high school now. And, they go back and forth. He's at home every night during camp. And literally in between, if they have 2-a-days, he can go home in between the 2-a-days. You know what I mean? So that built in something that when we get to college, we already know what camp life is in college too. So it's a little more akin to what that is as opposed to what most people go through now. So it definitely helped a lot.
You entered the Hall of Fame for your school in 2018. You're a soccer player, basketball player, track, football. Transitioning from those different sports and giving your best effort at all of those endeavors. If you had to pick one of those, which one was the one that you were best at, but which one did you like the most?
Good question, but I can't say there was one or the other. There was different things that pushed me one way or the other during that period. But I just, like I said, I was good at all of them. You could possibly say that the track was my best sport. But basketball would have been up there as well. And part of that, what you're asking, like I said, my family is a basketball family by nature. So at some point, my father was pushing me to cut some of the sports out and just stick with basketball. He wanted to see a basketball player. He wanted to see that continue, and that kind of pushed me away from basketball, actually. So we had a new coach. I already was bumping heads with my coach. And now I got my dad wanting me to get rid of this other stuff. So I literally stopped playing basketball. So my senior year, I didn't even play basketball. I decided I was going to just train for track, which there really isn't an indoor season, but I kind of traveled and did some indoor stuff my senior year as opposed to playing basketball. So I went to indoor national championships as a high schooler and indoor states, which I was runner-up in the state during that time as opposed to playing basketball. But I would have never done that if it wasn't for my father pushing me to pare it down. So kind of as a rebellious move, I said I won't play basketball anymore. Even though I love basketball, I played basketball longer than anything else besides soccer, which I explained to you before. So it was up there in my love. Football was probably my last love. I didn't start playing football besides midgets, which I started late as well. I started playing midget football when I was 10 or 11. So the last two big stages of midget football I played. Then once we had a junior high team, a big district. So we had a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade team, a 7th and 8th grade team and a 9th grade team. Then we had a JV and a varsity. So of course, as I'm coming up, the coaches, and our system worked like a feeder system. So they saw the guys coming through, the midgets, and they expected them to come through. And it was a good thing because they kind of ran the same plays. We all ran the same system. So as you grew in, it kind of worked that way, which was a good thing. But as we're coming up, they were mad at me because they were looking for me to come out, and I didn't come out. For one, I played an extra year of midgets because we lost the championship the year before. And I just happened to be where my age cut off where I could go back as opposed to going and, playing for my middle school team. So I decided to go back to midgets to win a championship, which we did. So they were mad at me for that. And then when we got out of that, as I got as a freshman, I still didn't play because I played varsity soccer as a freshman. So I kind of skipped, playing football because once again, I don't know where I would have been, but I was new to the sport relatively, a couple years. I was slight, you know what I mean? So I would have been starting at the bottom and not really in the mix. So why would I want to be in the mix with JV or, that type of football when I'm starting varsity in soccer as a 9th grader? So that's kind of how it's been. I can't really say I have one that's better than the other. I just kind of went where the water flowed at the time. You know what I mean?
Now, when I think about what it takes to be a high level track athlete, and, I could see the quick twitch in you in terms of some of the plays that you made. You had good turnover speed, nice stride, but then, you end up having a lot of success as a jumper. For us in Ohio, they didn't teach triple jumping when I was in high school. It was just strictly long jump, high jump, shot, discus. Those were the extent of the field events. For you to learn the techniques of something like triple jumping and the hours that you have to put in and how technical you have to be on your steps. Is that something that came naturally to you, or do you credit anyone for getting you acclimated to that end of the sport and helping you to attain that success?
No, it was totally natural. I won't say I did any extra work because I didn't. And like you said, there wasn't a big coaching protocol for triple jumpers because it just wasn't that prevalent. It was in me. I happened to do it and had the coordination and the athletic ability to be successful at it without much work because it just wasn't that popular. But there wasn't that much to it in the interim. There's some coach, Mr. Timko, who actually coached my father as well, who took me, under his wing as I got in the high school level and did a lot of training with me as far as the jumps themselves, but not necessarily a triple jumper. He did what he could, but there just wasn't much out there, you know what I mean? Especially in, our part of the world, their track season's short because back in the day, it snowed in September and that snow was on the ground till April. It's not like now where, you might get a nice day here and there or a good winter where you're out there early. We weren't out there until April because you couldn't go out there until April. So there wasn't much time for trying to figure out how to do those types of things because you had to do them somewhere in the gym or something. So it was really just a natural thing, just from athletic ability. Now, obviously, as I got older, that took on something. But in the beginning, it literally was just like, throw him out there. We need a body. He looks like he can do it. And I just happened to be able to do it. And as far as long jump, that's just a combination of spring and speed, which I already had. So that worked out. And then as I got to high school, we had the best high school long jumper in the country who still actually holds the record. So I came up under him in his last year. So I had that tutelage as far as the long jump coming out.
Now, my next question, this is new information to me. Christian Evans was the one that referred to you by this nickname. And, this is a guy that I have had the pleasure of meeting. I went to Charlotte back in 2014 and spent a year teaching down there. And he's good friends with one of my childhood friends from Youngstown. But certainly to getting to know him and know what he's about, it just makes sense for all of the guys that I've met through my dealings from Penn Hills. You guys basically have good hearts and are sound people and good people to be around. But he referred to you as Hollywood, and when he said that, I chuckled a little bit about it. I know it kind of fits, some of the demeanor of how you express yourself, how you carried yourself. But can you give some clarification and insight for those of us that may not know you by that moniker, and where does that come from? What is that all about?
Man, that's just me. That was me back then. It was crazy. Some of the things I used to say that I kind of forgot that people remind me over the years. It's almost embarrassing, you talk about, so when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, a lot of the old cats came out and congratulated me, and they would be online and they would be posting little stories and little snippets of memories they have. I just wanted to hide, like, man, I appreciate the love, but woo, you reminded me I was something terrible. Some of the things I used to say, which I won't even expand upon too much. But the Hollywood was just, I like to put on a show. It was going to be a show. We grew up around the same time. Dion was my guy, but he was prime time, and I couldn't be prime time, and I didn't want to be prime time. I was going to be better than prime time anyway, so I had to have my own thing, but the show still had to go. So Hollywood it was, and I never even took it. They gave me that, which is always good when somebody gives you a nickname and you don't put it on yourself. And then I don't know how I kind of got away from it, because if you don't know me from back then, only someone from that era will call me Hollywood. So if I ever hear somebody say Hollywood, I perk up like, who is that? Because it has to be from the depths. Because even in college, main time was my thing, which is, like I said, just the other side of prime time. And I'm not sure why I didn't even carry Hollywood with me at that point. I don't know where it went, but it's definitely subject to that era where I was just an animal when it came. I mean, it was a show. It had to be a show. So that's where the Hollywood came from.
Segueing into that part of your life, leaving high school and transitioning into college. You enter into Edinboro University, 1992. Can you, give me some insight into how you landed at Edinboro and what was the process of that? Did you have any other schools that you were looking at or wanting to attend, or was that what you had set, or was that your only opportunity to continue on to the next level?
Yeah, that was a total mistake, and to this day, I don't know how I got there. And that's it's the truth, actually. I had no intention that really. I didn't even look at any. I hadn't looked at any D2 schools. Not that I had thought anything about them, but really, I hadn't talked to anybody from a D2 school. I was an All American track athlete, so I had those. I had those opportunities. I was all conference in football in the big conference, so I had some opportunities that really didn't reach down to Division II schools. They are the only Division II school I ever even spoke to, and I only spoke to them basically on the back of Larry. So when I came to visit, I really only came to visit on the back of Larry. Actually, the week before, I was at Akron, which Adam Martin was there, who was a running back previous to me at Penn Hills. He was at Akron at the time, so I went and visited Akron about 2 weeks before that. And I didn't know too much about Akron either, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a good thing. They wanted me to commit that day to a full ride at Akron during my visit, and I just didn't have the right tutelage to, I really wanted to go there. I had some other visits lined up at even some bigger places, but I really liked it, and if I would have had the right tutelage, somebody would have told me, if you like it, here's the offer, take it. But I didn't have that. So I said, I'll hold off, I'll wait. And as I got home, I'm like, I really liked Akron. I want to go back to Akron, you know? So I come into school the next day and I'm like, call Coach Junko, you know, I'm talking to my coach, like, tell him I want to sign. Actually, Jason Taylor is the one who signed in my spot at Akron. He's like, we don't have that spot anymore, but if you want, you can come walk on or whatever. Ego and everything else. At that point, I was like, I ain't walking on. No, you know what I mean? If I'm coming, I'm coming. I'm not coming in that capacity. So I didn't go there. And then even around your neck of the woods, YSU, who was big back then, the Penguins were doing their thing in 1AA back then, but I wasn't even really into the rankings and whatnot. I was speaking with them, but they kind of didn't want me to run track. There's a couple places that didn't want me to do both sports. So that was kind of cutting me back from some of the things because I was going back and forth. Well, I want to do both. And back then it just wasn't, you didn't do both back then. It was one or the other. Like, times have changed so much. Wisconsin was a big one that I should have took up on, which Wisconsin just seemed like too far away and too much in the hole for me to go to. But they went to the Rose Bowl the next year after that. Troy Vincent is somebody that was trying to get me to go there and going back and forth with him, and it was all good. I didn't have the right tutelage going through the recruiting process. It was a lot coming in. I had calls coming in. I had letters coming in, a lot going on. And it was just like, I'm trying to deal with school, and there were some issues at school at the time. So it was just a whole mess. And to round it back around, Larry got them to contact me. Coach Smith, was Coach Smith still there when you were there? Okay. Coach Smith, great guy. I said I'll come visit. So, me and my mom, we come up there and go visit. And I'm like, nah. I came to kick it with Larry. Like, what's going on? What you doing up here? Kick it with Larry. Not to mention, we got snowed in while I was up there. So anybody that knows me, as soon as I left the borough, I went straight to Florida. There's a reason for that. I don't like snow. So you want to tell me I went visited somewhere, got snowed in a couple extra days, and you think I wanted to come to that place? So I'm not even sure how it happened. I think that the coaches kind of were back and forth with my parents. And with me being the first person going, I think my parents kind of said, yeah, he's signing with you, because they kind of just wanted me to go somewhere. They were trying to get that and get it going. So one day I come home from practice and Coach Smith and TH was in my living room. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And I guess, like I said, they told him that I was going to sign there. I didn't even know how to accept it. I didn't even know what to do. You know what I mean? My mom's, happy, and she got tears in her eyes, and I'm just looking around like, what is happening here? You know what I mean? And Coach Smith, how he was, great guy, great coach, great guy. He's like, I understand that, you got some offers, places, and you want to do this and that. He's like, but, we're going to take care of you. And if you can play, you'll get to the level you want to get to. I had aspirations of doing certain things, which I wasn't even sure I did really. I just knew I had some abilities that maybe could cultivate into something. He's like, if you can play, then we'll get you where you need to go and what have you. I understand. I was like, all right, you convinced me. All right. In my mind, I'm thinking I could just go and leave or what, or whatever. And that process that also I didn't understand, because, in our day, you couldn't go and leave. You had to sit out. So I didn't understand that process either when that came time for me to try to make that decision. So the long way around, that's how I got to the borough. It was quite by accident, because I would have never, just by virtue of the climate, nothing even against the school, by virtue of climate, you couldn't get me to that joint. You couldn't have got me to that joint. And what I experienced with the little bit of getting snowed in was nothing compared to once you got there. Because, like I know, if it's snowing in the borough, that's a good day. Because if it ain't snowing, it's too cold to snow, and you better not go outside. You know what I mean? So that's how I got to the borough, man. You know, it wasn't it was by fate, but not by, you know, I look back on it and it was faithful, but it, you know, it wasn't where I was meant to be. Not where I wanted to be. I always say it was where I was meant to be because that's where I was, but not by choice.
I can relate to that. My own experience. I had great teammates in high school. I was always a team guy. So, I never really cared about how much I got the ball or what uh, plays were directed for me. I got in where I fit in. And, looking back at it, I can see how not being a little bit more assertive and demanding, uh, how that hurt me in the long run in terms of wanting that bigger opportunity.
Right.
Quite like you, I had some MAC interest, but, it was the preferred walk on route. So Edinboro was not on my radar. I had never really heard of anything going on up there, but, taking the visit, the time running out for the signing period, it just felt like it was what I was supposed to do. And it was the best choice that was left over. But, it ultimately ended up working out for myself. For you, when you think about your development there and your place in the pecking order on the depth chart for some of the years. We come into a crowded room in terms of corners, uh, safeties. We got some all-time greats that are kind of there in front of us. you know for you, knowing the type of athlete that you were in high school, what your ability was, what your confidence level was, what your attitude was, what is your overall assessment about your career and your growth at Edinboro from 92 to the time that you finished playing in 96 with me?
Oh man, for a long time I had this, a very bad reflection of it because I felt like it was just time wasted, opportunity wasted. I really did. It took years of some reflection of being at an advanced age to start looking at the totality of life and knowing that those years of adversity and what have you created who I am today, which I hope to continue to be and be, a good man. But for a long time, I felt like it crushed me. I felt uh, like I said, you look at the guys that I went to school with, that I was all in the mix with. I was all conference in the secondary. Everybody else that was all conference in the secondary that went with me all went to big D1 schools, which I could have done. Not to mention the biggest thing that I noticed as we would come home and hobnob down Oakland, down the O, when we get our little breaks, every time I come home, everybody was getting big, man. You know what I mean? I come back, the Van Houten wasn't getting it for me. You know what I mean? The calf wasn't getting it right because I'm like, man, I'm still 160. These dudes come back next year, they're 180. Mike end up being like 215. Gerald, who was at Pitt at the time, he was a running back, obviously, and he was always bigger. And he wasn't on the DB like I was saying, but everybody that went to a program was growing. So I know we lacked that in general, not just me, but that's, as I look back at it, but you'll attest to this. We lacked the ability to grow people. You know what I mean? We didn't have the programs in order. We didn't have nutrition. We didn't have the information. We didn't have the equipment to create bigger, better players. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, it's not on the coaches. Resources was a big thing. But like I said, that was the biggest thing I noticed. Like, not that these guys went somewhere, but why are these guys, every time we come home, they're getting bigger, and I'm still the same size for 4 years? You know what I mean? I'm getting stronger because now I'm lifting weights, which I never did before. So I'm getting stronger, but I'm not gaining any weight. I'm not getting any bigger, anything like that. So like I said, for a long time afterwards, I felt like it was just like, man. And part of it was I would get frustrated. So like you said, we had some big time players there when we got there. So when I get there, I'm in the corner. Georgie Lewis there, All American corner, great player. Also from the Pittsburgh area. He's also a Whoopio player from my nemesis, Connellsville, which we lost to them in the playoffs 2 years in a row. Horror story. So he was from there, so I already knew him from around the way, you know. But I get here, he has my number, for one. For one, he got my number, you know. And he's in my spot. So he got my number in my spot, knowing I can't get on this field for nothing. But I wasn't enough of an athlete where, you know, back then, freshmen didn't even play. You're getting redshirted. A freshman wasn't playing back then. But I played because they moved me to receiver, which that was cool with me too. But it is, you know, it was frustrating. Coming in was frustrating because I didn't expect that. When I came in, I remember coming like the first day of camp. I'm like, man, what am I doing here? You know, I got my gold chains on. I'm coming to the way. I remember from walking over from the dorm we were staying at for camp and walking over to breakfast. I got my gold chains on. I think I had like a pink Izod shirt on. And so, you know what I mean? So, you know, I was Hollywood still. I'm walking over to this joint, all of about 158 pounds. You know, you know what I mean? I'm walking over to these joints like, man, what am I doing here with these bums? You know what I mean? And once I figured out what I was doing there with these bums, it got frustrating. Not just physically, because physically I was okay, but I didn't understand the system either. You know what I mean? I didn't understand the coverages and what they were. Is that for some reason they made it more complicated than it needed to be. As I got older and really understood it, I'm like, well, why don't you just say this? You know what I mean? Instead of making it a memorization project, why don't you just say cover two is just two people up here, two people right here? Who don't know that? You know what I mean? It's like, no, you say we got cover 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8, and you just remember them. This is where everybody got to go. All right. We ain't have all that where I came from. You know what I mean? We just lined up and ball. But if you would have explained it a certain way, it would have been easier to digest as you throw it all, you know what I mean, as a 17-year-old freshman. And it was frustrating. So I got into some other habits. Then I started drinking because I never drank at all in high school. I never did anything like that. You know, I wasn't a straight-laced kid, but I didn't get into stuff that I thought was going to be a detriment to what I was trying to do. And I was always trying to perform at some level. And I wasn't that kid that, you know, bared down and worked out and did all that. I didn't do that. I tried to skip every workout I could. You know, a part of the reason why I started running track because I didn't want to work out with the football team in the off season. I'm like, man, I'll go here and run some track. You know what I mean? I ain't messing with them in the off season. But it was frustrating. So like I said, for a long time, I look back at that like it killed me. I felt like it killed me. I really did. I got into a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have. And being so close to home didn't help either. That was another thing. So at this point, I'm frustrated. I'm already getting into stuff. And now I'm only 100 miles from home. So, you know, you fall back on what you're comfortable with. So when I'm frustrated at school, what do? I run home, you know, get into some stuff at home or whatever, back and forth. But it was just easy because the setup was there. Not till I learned late in the game, no matter what anybody thinks about Coach E, I needed Coach E when I got there. You know, he had his things, he had his quirks, and you know, we'll laugh about him and talk about him till we die. You know, but I needed Coach E from the beginning. You know, nothing against Coach Browning and none of those guys, but I needed Coach E. I remember the time that I missed class, which was very often, and Coach E caught one that I missed class. He tracked me down and said, "How was class?" You know. Wasn't there. You know, grab your shoes, you know, and just brought me to the gym and just ran me into the dirt. And I'm like, it hurt and it was bad. And this was later, you know, this was later in our days. So this was at the end of it. And I went to him. I was in tears. I said, I wish you were here when I got here, because I needed that. I got to a place where I didn't have to do nothing. So if I had a class at 8:00 in the morning, guess what? I probably ain't going to be there. Well, I needed someone with that structure to give me that. And that's what we missed. I think that's what we lacked. And that's what I think smaller schools lacked back in those days. There's a big discrepancy back in those days as opposed to now. Now a lot of the smaller schools get some more money and they got some more knowledge. It's a big difference. But back then, they lacked those type of things that not only athletically compromised you, but as a person. You know what I mean?
I'm taking all of that in that you're saying, because when you're relaying that to me, I can put those things in their proper place in relationship to you, because I was there for some of it. Because athletically, you had the skills, you had the tools, you had the ability, you had the attitude, you definitely had the courage, but that peace, that discipline, that accountability, and holding yourself to a standard that you probably left high school with, you know what I'm saying, in terms of wanting to be at the top of your A game. And it's interesting, all these years later, if I had to describe and characterize you as a 20-year-old guy versus a 50-year-old guy, there's just so much growth and maturity in your outlook and the way that you present yourself and the topics that you kind of touch on, and I'm sure that was always there, because you always gave game, but you just kind of walked to the beat of your own drum, and it took a strong hand to have you go a certain way in a certain direction. And that's just, my opinion and my observation of you, because, there'd be times where, I see you stand your ground in certain situations. One being down at the Borough Hotel, I kind of witnessed, some of the politics that came up from Pittsburgh up there that weekend. And, just seeing you being a frontline guy and stepping right into that fire and just handling it on the spot. Some people may look at that as a negative mark against a guy, or kind of paint you as a bad apple. But, for those of us that come out of those environments and know what some of that is about, if you don't deal with the neighborhood junkyard dog right on the spot, he gonna chase you every day, so me saying that about you, and you're giving that color commentary about some how things played out for you, that last year in 96, when it's just us left, and we're the elder statesmen of that secondary, but we still have competition, we still have to fight for playing time each week. What was that last year like for you, in terms of you being a full-time starter at corner, and you had that ability and that know-how and that knowledge, and I guess we can credit that to Coach E, to be able to see the versatility in you and trust you enough to be able to go from being a corner on one series and then moving the strong on another and moving the free on another. What did you how did you look at that senior season for yourself? Did you look at it as a last chance to put a cap on what you came there to do, or was it just the fallout of that's how the chips fell for Jermaine Carswell?
In the beginning, I came in with a great outlook. If you remember, I stayed up there in the summer and worked with Dave Heim and did some camps, and I stayed up this all summer and worked out. I came into camp in the best shape that I was. If you recall, I ran the fitness test with every group that year. You know what I mean? So I came in with the impetus of being a leader, being a difference maker, but being a leader and, having my best foot forward. And so that was my thing. And then I broke my hand early, and it just kind of was a little mini setback. and it never really got back right. You know what? When I had the club on, and then I got the club off, it was just like a mini setback. It was almost like I did all this work finally, and look what I got from it. You know what I mean? I'm still set back. And then the back part of Coach E is the positions he did put us in. You know, as far as just for me moving around, I felt like I could play anywhere anyway, but I always thought I should have been standing next to you in the first place. You know what I mean? That safety, that was to me, in my mind, that was the best thing of how it worked. So for me to be moved around, I'm glad I could move around and be that versatile. But no, at that point in my time, I need to be somewhere where I could bear down and do my thing. I kind of liken that to like basketball. I remember I had a coach, like I said, we bumped heads my junior year in high school when that new coach came in, and he was a Catholic school guy. He had like his Catholic school favorites that came up with him through the Catholic school ranks. Great coach. His record was stellar. But he didn't know how to deal with not the city guys, but us. You know what I mean? He come into a group with us peoples. It's a little different. And we kind of had the modality of when you made a mistake in the game, the next thing you're going to hear is, you know what I mean? The whistle's blowing. The buzzer's blowing because you know he's going to pull you out. And the worst part about our last year, I felt like Coach E, and I think everybody in the room agreed with this, that Coach E created that in us. If you made a mistake on the field, first thing you do is what you doing? Looking to the sideline, see who's coming in. You know what I mean? So it was just an uncomfortable experience. Like I said, I wish it could have been better. I appreciate a lot of things that he did because he tried to look out for us. He really did try to look out for us. In the summertime, he tried to look out for us. If he would have been there all our years, you would have grown because he would have tried to make sure we ate and did all that stuff. There's the extra stuff that he would have done. But that dynamic that he created right there, it was difficult for all of us. You know, I mean, you sat in meetings and, you know, it was just a different way that was like, hey, hold on now. Not to mention it was new to us. So not only you come in like Trump, you just tearing it up and you just got here, you know? So whether it was good or bad, we don't know because you just blowing this thing up right now and it's crazy. So that's how I looked at that. The season itself, you know, we had a good team again. We always had a good team there. So I felt like we never really achieved what we should have. And there was always some dynamic of it that made it that way. You know what I mean? So in the grand scheme, I wish it was different. But like I said, for whatever reason, God put me in that place to be where I'm at now. So I had to have that. I have to be able to tell this story to go forward in life. And like I said, I just don't feel, I hate that I feel like I missed the part. There's one part of college that I tell people, and it's not about the education. Because if you're not doing something in a technical field, medical school or something like that, college is just a learning point for you to learn how to deal with people, learn how to take information, learn how to get information. It's a learning point. But the thing about college that I miss, and you see it more in bigger schools, is the allegiance to that flag. You know what I mean? That bond that you have to that flag, to that school. And, you know, we got rivals with IUP, obviously. That's it. I know people that went to Slippery Rock. I could care less they went to Slippery Rock. Guys that go to IUP, we still go back and forth because that was our big football rival. But in general, I don't have an allegiance to the borough that I feel like I should have as a college student. You know, some people do. Some people do. I don't. But I feel like, especially as an athlete, that I should have that. Now, there's not an athlete I know that went to a bigger school that doesn't have that. You know what I mean? Homecoming, they got to be there because the crew's there. We don't have that. We don't have that as a team. Even the last homecomings I went to, it wasn't like that because we don't have that. I don't have a drop of borough gear in my possession. None. So I feel like I lost that part of it. And like I said, I feel like it was a piece that was stolen, but I needed it to be stole to be where I'm at and go forth. So that's just how life works.
Now, I'm going to transition into the other part of your athletic experience as a college athlete. You uh, helped legend Coach Doug Watts, who ran that track and field program for 40 plus years. And, you brought your talent to that program each season, going out there and displaying your ability. What was that switch and that change in mindset, going from a physical sport like football and then transitioning and, getting yourself in tip top shape for the track season and performing and competing at that level?
Man, it was totally opposite. So you asked me about our seasons and, my career as a football player at the Borough. My track career is totally different because, like you said, Coach Watts was a legend. He's been pumping out national champions and All Americans for as long as he's been there, mostly in the distance sports. But if you look in the archives, the Borough's had some blazing sprinters, some blazing skill positions, relay teams. So he's put some people out, and he knows and he treats it accordingly. So what a lot of people don't realize at the Borough, because of the high level of people that he has, we don't necessarily run our PSAC schedule. So we basically ran an invitational type schedule, a D1 schedule, so to speak, as track athletes. And we were, it was a totally different experience because we were treated differently. So, like I didn't go and do Slippery Rock and all that stuff. We're in Michigan, we're at Michigan, Tennessee, North Carolina, Duke. That's the type of schedule we ran. So it was just like a totally different level. It was almost like you felt the respect that I thought I should have had in football that I got during track, because now I'm at the big shows. Only time we came back to the PSAC was for some type of tri meet or for the championships. That's the only time we ever competed in the PSAC at Edinboro. And there weren't a lot of people, because if there was, he would split it off, because there's been plenty of meets where Coach Watts, a part of the team would go here, and then there's 4 of us in a van with Coach Watts headed to Michigan. You know what I mean? We competed. He took us where we needed to be to compete on our levels. And that's what's missed. That's what was missing from football. We got a little taste of it the year that we played Abbey and we played Portland State. You know what I mean? We got a little bit of taste of that. And that's how it should have been. But it wasn't like that the whole time you were there. That year was, we did our thing, but we had to go get into that mix a little bit. And that's what I felt like I needed respect-wise, whether I earned it or not, because I didn't earn it. And I probably didn't really earn it in track in the beginning. I just was naturally talented at that level that I garnered that level of respect. But he made sure that it was applied and I was where I needed to be. You know what I mean? So the track experience was absolutely totally different. The places I was where I felt like I should have always been, because I competed on the biggest stages I could have. No matter where I went, I would have still been at all the meets that I was at, except I represented the Borough. But I was everywhere. I was at every big relay in the country, from Penn relays to C-Ray at Knoxville. Like I said, Michigan, just anywhere there was a big meet that he could financially put it together. He had a lot of pull too. You know what I mean? I remember going to national championships in California, and we checked into this hotel out there, and he's like, we get to the hotel, and it's kind of janky. He's like, pack it up. We ain't staying here. And he takes us to this mega resort. You know what I mean? He's like, I'll take care of this. He just always wanted us to have the best, so miss that guy. He was a good guy, and he's a quirky guy, and to deal with someone like me, man. And then you had Gil when Gil ran, because he was used to, like, the crowd. Like I said, he was a long distance guy, so he'd have the country white guys that he's used to dealing with, and then you start throwing us in the mix. man, he used to just be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I can't believe you said that. You know, you think about Gil too. He's like, I can't believe you did that. You know what I mean? But it was different. It was different, man. It was different. It was the highest level really I could have been at, except for facilities, and it all comes back as far as being the best you can be and me getting the best out of it. And that's the only thing to this day. I still feel like I cheated myself because I didn't have facilities. And even in that sake, as great as Coach Watts was, he wasn't a jump coach. You know what I mean? I didn't have a jump coach. I had a cross-country coach that was trying to figure out how to adapt to this high-level jumper I have. So I was just totally, you know, it's a lost chapter of my life. And it's hard because, you know, regret's the worst thing you could try to deal with. You got to get rid of it. You can't live in regret. And I lived in it in a long time, and it still creeps up. You can't live in it. It is what it is. But to really think back on it, it's a lost part of my life that, you know what I mean? What can you do? I didn't have the knowledge to try to get to something else.
You know, as I'm listening and thinking about, you know, my time with you, 93 through 1998, you know, I watched you go through, you were a different type of dude for guys our age. You know, we're a couple months apart in age, but I come in a year behind you, you know, and just watching you and watching your progression and you maneuver, you know, you were a father when I met you. You know what I mean? How did you balance being an athlete, trying to get your books, keeping, you know, people out of your space and adapting to fatherhood, you know, all at one time, you know, and then as you've grown, as you've gotten more experience and gotten out into the world and settled down and settled into the man that you are, you know, how has that experience been for you, and how has it allowed you to guide your children in the various ways that you've had to point them?
To be blunt, I didn't balance it. You know what I mean? I didn't balance it. And I would have really had nothing to fall back or fall forward on to be able to balance it. I didn't have the mentality or the growth, the maturity as a person to deal with it. And I didn't have a structure that would help me deal with it. And it's 50-50. So she didn't either. So those two things coming together just, you know, made it end up being a bad situation. And I can add that on to the lost chapter and to the regretful situations that it was. Because like you said, I have two younger children now in my older age. And I feel like my older children just totally missed out. And we both missed out, not them, but we both missed out on what is the blessing, you know what I mean, of fatherhood and being around. It also gets me to think, like, people really, if I really had to say it, people shouldn't even have kids until they're older. It's kind of antithetic to what people say. They want to have them early and go, but you really can't really deal with it. You can't have that balance until you're at a certain point in life. You know, not even financially, but financially is a big thing because financial times bring in other stressors, but just mentally, it's just not possible. So that was kind of a blessing too. And that goes to the thing, like, the father that I am now comes from the pitfalls of the father I was then, you know, so who's to say what I would have been now? And I like to think I'm a great father, but that comes from the pitfalls of that, you know, so it takes that broken glass to mold this. So it's tough, you know, once again, it's a regret thing, but you got to kind of take it in the context of whatever the plan is. That was part of the plan for whatever reason, you know. I would have never wanted it to be that way. And like I said, it has everything to do with how I am now with my kids. You know, it's just a blessing. But I feel slighted, and they feel slighted. and they have the right to feel slighted. But I feel slighted too, because what I enjoy from my kids, I would have loved to enjoy back then. You know, and I can circle that back to my brother, who, like I spoke on before, wasn't an athlete to instruct me, but my brother had a child young. Okay. The difference is when he had his kid, it was old school. No matter what you're doing, stops right now. He went and got a job and went and raised his, raised his daughters, who just got finished graduating with advanced degrees from their respective colleges just recently. He stopped everything and did that. Whereas, I wish I would have had that in me, maybe not to stop everything, but to do what was necessary, as opposed to just kind of like, what are we going to do? I need to do this. You know what I mean? And it was all well-intentioned, because at the end of the day, I felt like I was going to do something to be able to circle back on it. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I can't really do this now, because now I got to get to the league or do something so I can do this and take care of this. So the intentions weren't bad in a way that I didn't want to be a great father and be part of it. You know what I mean? So that's just, there was no balance back then, but it's just part of the puzzle.
And then, can you talk about, your life experience and your trajectory, leaving the Edinboro experience? What has sustained you and taken you up to the point of where you are now in life?
Whew. Grace. Grace, that's it. Because there's definitely been some ups and downs, and I probably shouldn't be here. There's probably many times where I look back like, I'm not supposed to be here. But within that, for a while, I still chased my athletic career. I spent some years doing that, which was good. I got into coaching a little bit. Would have liked to stay in the coaching, but at the time I was coaching, I still was training for the Olympics. So, and that's been a big thing with me, always trying to split. If you think about Dion playing baseball and football, or like Bo Jackson playing baseball and football, as I grew up, that was always my thing. Like, I was going to be the greatest split athlete. The problem is my split was football and track. And the difference between track and every other sport, as you know, you're talking about millimeters, milliseconds. That's the difference between being good, great, or whatever. There's levels to this, and it comes in increments. You know what I mean? So it's not like football where I could get taped up and go out there. If I'm hurt in any way, you can't perform on the track at a high level. You know what I mean? So any strains, bruises, sprains that I took from football season to track season were always a detriment. So my whole career, I was always coming in with a detriment, because I couldn't possibly come into a track season healthy, because I just played football. You know what I mean? So that's always been the bane of my existence, is trying to do too much. And it's funny, if we really circle back to my dad trying to get me to play basketball. And I always bucked it. Now, I'm still not a believer that you only got to play one sport and focus like these kids do today, and that's all they do, and they go to these clinics and they got coaches for all one sport. I don't believe in that. But if he could have expressed it to me differently, as far as you don't need 6, maybe cut it to 3 or 2, because it's about focus and putting your effort toward that thing. You know what I mean? Which is something that I still struggle to this day, because I just want to do everything, even if it's just cleaning around the house. I want to clean around the house and cut the grass and the hedges and do all that, and, clean the pool and do all that at once. And when you try to do it all, you don't get the quality that you need out of any of it, and maybe that's what he was trying to express to me in some way back then, and he didn't know how to express it. Why? Because he was a young father. You know what I mean? So it came across as something different. I took it as something different. And it just follows you, and it just grows. And that's something that I express to my kids, that these things I'm trying to put in you are just things that you need to take and get the gist of now, because they're going to carry you. You'll see them in different parts of your life as you grow. It has nothing to do with what I'm telling you right now. It has zero to do with it. But you need the concept, because the concept is going to be what's important going down the line, you know?
The theme of this platform is one more down. And, when you look back over the things that you've gone through, your athletic prowess and some of the opportunities that you wish that you may have done differently or could have done better, or maybe just had another chance in a different way at. When you reflect back on your life, that's behind you at this point, and this doesn't have to be athletically, it could be philosophically, it could be something in your past, your off the field life. But for you, if you had that one more down to do for yourself, what situation and scenario would you put yourself in? What would that experience be for you? Who would be with you, and how would you replay that one more down in your life?
Man, that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't even think I can come up with an answer for you, because it's just so big. That's a great question. And I'm gonna have to ponder that just for my general thought processes. I don't know. We talk about crossroads, and me and you were talking about crossroads a little bit the other day. And there's been so many crossroads, and most people have them, that you can't just pinpoint one crossroad, because it may one has something to do with the other, and it may not have something to do with the other. So there's nothing that I can say like, man, if I just would have did this, then this would have been better, or this would have been better. Like I said, I could say the biggest thing in my life that I could say is maybe coming to the borough. That would be up there if I had to have like let's start with a top three. Coming to the borough would be one that I would change. But then again, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be talking to you and wouldn't have the relationship I have with you, maybe, and some of the other things that came with that. I have 2 children from the borough. No matter what the situation, I still have 2 children from the borough. You know what I mean? So that's once you get into the weeds with that, of trying to pitch, to cherry pick those situations, it gets deep. It gets deep, because what are you willing to give up to change that? That's the key. What are you willing to give up that came with that decision? You want to gain something, but there's no gaining without losing something. But if I had to just give you a list, that's definitely on there in top 3. The little situation you were talking about that you dug up, you brought up to me, that situation back in high school, I would go back to that situation and do it differently. Because once it was found out that I was out of the district and I couldn't still go to Penn Hills, there was opportunities that presented themselves that maybe would have changed the structure of some things for the different schools I could have went to. Funny is that one of the opportunities is probably from the person that told on me. You know what I mean? The coach from Central Catholic, is probably the one that told on me and then called me up like, hey, don't you need a school to go to? You know what I mean? The rival school. But it would have been a different opportunity. And looking back, it would have been an opportunity possibly that would have given me some of the things that I think would have made my life better. And I just hate to say that. It's so hard to say, make my life better. Everybody says, make my life better, make my life better. But like I said, with that, you're going to lose some stuff that you might not be willing to lose. And the thing about it, if you could really go back and do it, once you lose them, you're gone. And it's like, oh, no, I didn't want that. You know what I mean? So it's a great question, but that would be my answer to it. That if you really look back on your life, nobody can really say, unless you're willing to lose everything to that point, you got to be willing to lose everything to that point to be able to circle back to a point and say, I wish I could change this right there. Because once you change that point, everything after that changes. So great question, but that would be my answer to it. There's obviously some pressure points in my life that I would get to, but in the totality, that's how you would have to think about it. And I don't think I will be willing to lose anything that has come after that.
I think up until I saw you about 3 weeks ago, it had been about 28 years almost, maybe 26, 27 years since I had physically seen you in person.
Yeah.
And, us getting to break bread for a few moments, you going out of your way to come to where I was and uh, meet with me, it just kind of goes back to those important parts of life. Now we all leave high school with grand ideas, a lot of bravado, a lot of ego, and some of that gets tempered in life by your failures. Some of it gets confirmed by your successes. But the one thing about getting the chance to see you, us having conversation and knowing some of the things that you've dealt with recently, and just listening to you talk, listen to how you've grown, and then the direction that you appear to be going now in your life, and you being satisfied with you. I don't think that you've never been a person to hide who you were, but I can see the difference in the guy that I met in 1993, and some of the things that we found ourselves peeking in the door here and there as college guys. We wouldn't risk what we've built up to this point, now as 50-year-old men. But the thing that stood out to me is, you know, you are still the same solid stand-up guy and the man of your word that I met you as in 1993. And I was particularly appreciative that you had a car that had brakes this time when you came to scoop me up, and we made it there and back safely. So, doing these interviews and getting this time to reflect with people that I know personally and have a high regard for and hold dear in my life, I think sometimes you need to have that reminder of, when you were at your peak and when you were at your best, and then knowing that you have people that you can call on after 25, 26, 27 years, and they still be there for you or be willing to be there for you. I think that's the great metaphor for what sports is, what life is, and what that linear path that we sometimes walk as men. It's great to get those reminders that you have solid bonds that just stand the test of time. So I'm grateful to you for you being able to share who you are, to give me an opportunity to have a moment to reflect back, and then to listen to your perspective and your outlook on life. And it's just always appreciated. We may not have gotten as many picks, tackles, or playing time as we would have wanted for ourselves, but I think when you mix up those ingredients and you bake that pie, the end result is going to be a fulfilling meal. And my friendship with you, it's always been fulfilling. I've learned a lot from you, and I've taken a lot of things from you over the years, and just watching who you are as a man, and how you carry yourself and direct yourself. And I'm certainly glad, to see that the latter half of your life, you know what it's about. You got a direction and a foundation, and you're setting the table for your younger children to avoid some of the things and navigations that you've already crashed through. So thank you for being on today and showing up as a brother. With us, it's always LOD, it's always Lynch Mob.
So for life, that.